This is how I used the psychology of persuasion to get rich in my 20s. Just 3 years ago, I was a broke sorority girl knocking on doors in the middle of California, 100-degree heat, selling solars to complete strangers. And after enough doors slammed in my face, I realized something. Every person you talk to has a specific psychology running underneath every decision that they make. It's almost like a program running quietly in the background, picking up on everything you say and everything you do without you even realizing it. And once you learn how to read that program, you can literally get almost anyone in the world to say yes. And that's what this video is all about. These are the 6 psychological moves that got me rich at just 23 years old, and that can do the same thing for you by turning you into the woman who can walk into any room and get the yes she came for. Starting with the first one. People will never believe you. They will only believe themselves. What I mean is that when somebody tells you something, even if they're completely right, your brain almost rejects it on contact because it's their idea, not yours. And this has probably happened to you when you're about to clean your room, or you're about to finish your assignment, or you were going to get up and work out, but right before you do so, walking down the hallway, your mother walks in and she's like, you need to clean your room, or you need to go do your assignment. Even though you were already gonna do that one thing on your own, the second she tells you to do something, it's like all the motivation just walked out of the door, because suddenly it feels more like a chore than your choice. And you almost wanna do the exact opposite just to prove a point. I fell victim to this too. And it's not you being stubborn, dramatic, or difficult. It's literally just how the human brain is wired. When the idea comes from somebody else, the brain will quietly resist it, no matter how good it actually is. But when that same idea comes from inside our own heads, we are completely sold on it. You literally see this anywhere. Like, think about the news, for example. When the news posts a story, let's say they're like, this girl got kidnapped by her boyfriend. You'd be like, well, how do you know that? You're instantly arguing with their facts. However, if the news tells you, this girl got kidnapped yesterday, neighbors say that 30 minutes before she went missing, her and her boyfriend were arguing. Now your brain is putting 2 and 2 together, and now you have the idea he probably took her. And now you're gonna do everything in your power to back that because it was your idea. There's actually a famous study on this by a researcher named Irvin Janis. This was done back in the 1950s, and it's been replicated 1,000 times ever since. And what he found is that when you try to convince somebody of something, the belief barely sticks. However, when you ask them a question that makes them argue for the exact same thing in their own words, they walk away more convinced than ever. It's called self-persuasion. It is one of the most powerful things you can learn. And once you see it, there's no way to unsee it. And this is exactly what changed everything for me when it came to sales. Because for my entire first year in sales, I thought that selling meant talking. The better pitch, the better close, but I didn't even know how wrong I was. The day I actually got good at sales was the day I stopped pitching and I started asking questions. For example, instead of telling the woman on my call why she needed to change her life, I started asking her, well, what does your life look like in 1 year from now if nothing changes? If you stay in the exact same position you're in right now? And then I would ask her, well, why even change? Why do you want to make that change? And then she would say it out loud in her own words. And this not only helps when it comes to her selling herself, but it also makes her realize that her current life and what her life is gonna look like in the next 6 months to a year if nothing changes could very well be her reality. And the second she says it out loud, it hits her in a way nothing I could have ever said would. And the secret weapon underneath all of this is silence. Because once you ask the question, your only job after that is to shut up and let it sit. Most of us have literally been trained to rescue or to fill the awkward silence, the awkward pause, or to soften what we say just to make sure that nobody is uncomfortable for too long of a period. But every time you jump in to fill the silence, you're basically just giving her a way out of answering. And the longer you let it sit in silence, the more honest her answers become and the more she can elaborate. Now, once I figured out how to get the other person talking, I noticed something else happened that I genuinely couldn't explain at first. I was still losing deals even though the person on the other end was agreeing with every single point I made. They would nod through the entire pitch, and then at the end of the call, she would still say, I need to think about it. And this is what brings me to the second move. And this is the one foundation underneath everything. It's that people buy from emotional outcomes, and then they justify their decision with logic. What this really means is that every single decision a human being has ever made, big or small, is made on emotion first. The logical reasons we tell ourselves comes in later. It's almost like a little explanation our brain writes after the fact, so the decision feels smart and considered. But the choice is already done by then. And a perfect example is Think about the last time you were maybe scrolling on TikTok or you fell in love with a bag or a perfume or some viral skincare thing that some of your favorite influencers use. In that single moment, when you see that product, your brain immediately starts building the case for why you should buy it. You say, I want this because it would go so well with my outfit, or everybody on social media is using this, or I want to age perfectly so I'm the baddest 70-year-old out there. So by the time you hit checkout, you had a whole list of perfectly logical reasons to spend the money. But the truth is, none of those reasons made you buy it. The feeling did the second you saw it. The outcome, the emotional outcome of what you're gonna get from using or buying this product. It's the same reason people buy sports cars. Nobody's buying a Lamborghini because it's a financially smart decision to spend $500,000 on a car that you can't even use every day. But they buy it because the feeling in the moment is like, the little boy in me is going to be applauding that I actually made it. I know I'm gonna get respect from people. People are gonna be turning their heads looking at me. I can wear whatever I want if I'm driving a Lamborghini. And those are all the emotional outcomes or the feelings of why you actually buy a Lamborghini. You just justify it with logic after. This is also the reason most of the regret purchases sitting in the back of your closet right now are there. It's not because you have bad taste or you're bad with your money, it's just because your brain made the decision on the feeling right then and there. And by the time the feeling wore off, your package was already at your door. And this exact loop was costing me deals in my first year of doing remote sales. I thought I was losing on logic, so I'd pile on more facts for more reasons, and that's the exact thing that was costing me. The second I learned this one persuasion trick, feeling decides and the logic just justifies, it became one of the biggest things that opened the door for me in remote sales. My closes started landing, my numbers started doubling, and honestly, this shifted a huge part of how I was able to consistently make $20,000 to $50,000 closing monthly from anywhere in the world. So once I got this move down, that's when the money started coming in. But even then, I noticed there was still one piece that was missing. It was quietly costing me tons of money in every single interaction I was having. Because it turns out the way people decide about you, whether you're worth their time or attention or their money, is actually getting locked in before you ever open your mouth. So the third move comes from a study that was, honestly, when I read it, it kind of broke my brain. It was done at Harvard by a psychologist named Nalini Ambady. And what she did was almost too simple to believe. She took silent video clips of college professors teaching their classes, and then she cut those clips down to just 2 seconds each. She then showed all of those videos to complete strangers who had never been in the school, never met the professors, never even heard them speak a single word. And she asked the strangers to rate the professors on how warm they are, or how trustworthy they seem, and how good they probably were at their job. Then she went and pulled the ratings from the actual students who had spent entire semesters sitting at those professors' classes, going through months of homework, lectures, office hours, and really getting to know them as human beings. And when she put the 2 sets of ratings side by side, they matched almost perfectly. You see, the strangers who had seen 2 seconds of the person were rating the exact same as the students who had spent 4 months with them. What this means is that whatever somebody decides about you within the first 2 seconds is essentially what they're going to keep deciding about you forever, unless something extreme breaks the pattern. For example, you know when you meet someone and the first impression you're like, they said something weird, the vibe was weird, I didn't like that person. But you don't even know them well enough to really determine whether you actually like them or not as a person. It was just that first few seconds of a conversation, you got an off vibe. Now the rest of the relationship, it's kind of almost ruined. It's really hard to come back from that when you made a decision about how you feel about somebody based off of the first impression. And this is exactly the move that took my numbers through the roof, both knocking on doors and eventually closing on remote sales calls. Because when I first started in sales, I was showing up, apologizing for being there. My shoulders were forward, my voice was softer, I was over-explaining the second I started talking. I was literally smiling at anything they said, just to not be awkward. On top of that, I sounded like every other sales rep they've heard 100 times. So they read me as somebody they could brush off, and they did. But the moment I switched that and I started showing up calm, confident, convicted, letting them speak, asking high-level questions, I ultimately just changed the entire way I started showing up in front of people. And when that flipped, they started treating me like somebody worth listening to. And this played a huge part on how I went from the girl that they almost sent home my first week of doing sales to eventually outproducing all the guys in my office. Now, the fourth move is what took me from making decent money to actually getting rich in sales. Because it's the move that turns a maybe into a yes more than anything else I've ever learned. It's called the reframe. Now there's tons of different reframes, but I'm just gonna give you guys a sneak peek of one that's really beneficial. So here's what's actually happening in the brain underneath every single decision that we make. We are all wired, every single one of us, to feel the pain of losing something about twice as hard as we feel the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. For example, somebody's gonna work a lot harder to not lose their last $1,000 than to gain an extra $1,000 because the pain of losing outweighs the pleasure of gaining. So when someone is staring at the price of a decision, whether that's the money, the time, effort, or the risk, that cost is hitting them about twice as hard as whatever they would gain on the other side, which is exactly why most maybes turn into a no. The cost is just louder than the upside. So once I figured this out, my entire job stopped being to argue people out of the cost, and instead it became to show them the bigger loss they were not yet looking at. So instead of trying to convince somebody that the price was worth it, I would just walk them through what their life looked like 1 year from now if absolutely nothing changed. In other words, I would highlight the cost of an action. The same job that they hated, the same apartment they've been living in, the same version of themselves that they were trying to fix. And I would let them sit in that for a second because that was the cost their brain had been ignoring. And the second that they actually felt that, the price of saying yes stopped being scary because the price of saying no now costs more. And this is the exact same reason you cannot get yourself to do the scary thing in your own life. You are overthinking and staring at what it might cost you to send that email or to ask that girl out or to have the conversation or to post the thing that you've been avoiding. But you are not staring or focusing at what it's already costing you to keep avoiding it. So the day you flip that picture for yourself is the day the action stops feeling scary and becomes the obvious choice. The thing you have been putting off or the conversation that you've been avoiding, the move you know you need to make, all of it suddenly feels less like a risk and more like the only thing that makes sense. And if you're already in sales, this one move alone is gonna turn you into a closing machine, which is something I'm gonna come back to a little bit later in this video. But if you are finding this video super valuable, let me know by hitting the like button, subscribing to my channel because I drop content like this every single week. Now, the fifth move is something that I have touched in other videos, but the reason I'm bringing it back today is because honestly, it's one of the most important skills that a woman can master. And it's still one that I'm learning every single day too. It's called the law of detachment. And if you've ever heard of it, it essentially means that the woman who needs the outcome the least is the woman who controls how it goes. And I know this sounds like one of those sleazy things people say, but once you understand what is actually happening in your body when you need something, you cannot unsee it or unfeel it. Because when you need an outcome, your nervous system literally does not let you hide it. It leaks out hundreds of tiny things in ways you can't control. For example, your voice gets faster, your smile gets a little too wide, you laugh a half second too early, your tonality or body or overall presentation will shift. And the person on the other end may not be able to name exactly what they're picking up, but they are picking it up. And they pull back because grasping reads as a warning sign to every human nervous system on the planet. It is literally a proven study that when you push something away from you, naturally that thing is gonna gravitate to you. Versus if you're pulling something, it's going to naturally push away from you. It's the same thing as like why the chase is so popular. When you love the chase and you're chasing after this girl or guy you like, you wanna push and they're pulling. But the second they're like, yes, I want you back, you're like, I'm gonna push away too now. It's the push-pull effect and it's so common in every area of your life. And this is exactly what was costing me deals when I first started in remote sales. I needed those commissions at first and so badly that the other man on the end of the call could feel it through the screen. And in sales, we have a specific name for it and it's called commission breath. And commission breath stank, okay? It's the same exact energy as the woman who texts back too fast or agrees to the plan she doesn't actually want to go to, or who lets the friend talk all over her and tells herself it's fine because she doesn't want to make a deal out of it. So the actual reframe is this. Confidence is not the absence of wanting something. It is the willingness to lose it. And the second you decide before the conversation even starts that you genuinely are willing to walk away from this, your whole body changes. Now, something that reminds me every time I'm in a conversation that I need to stay detached is this one line. It's that when you're in a sales conversation, the only life changing after this conversation is theirs, not yours. you're still gonna go to your next door and knock that one. You're still gonna have your next sales conversation after that, your next call. Your life is gonna go on the exact same. The only life changing after this call is theirs. And this is where the persuasion actually happens. Because psychologically, the human brain reads somebody who doesn't need them as higher status and higher value. This is the exact same reason we're drawn to the woman who doesn't seem to care, or the man who is really hard to pin down, because their detachment makes our brain assign more value to them automatically without us even realizing it's happening. And when you become that woman in any conversation, the person who used to make you chase suddenly starts chasing you, or the boss who used to talk over you starts now asking for your opinion. And the man who used to half-ass showing up starts actually showing up. And this is honestly the single biggest reason why most women never get rich. Because they're walking into every room needing something from it. And that's quietly costing them opportunities and relationships and money that's sitting literally right in front of them. Now, the last move I want to leave you with is the one that quietly multiplied everything else I just taught you. And it has honestly made me rich faster than anything else. And this is called reciprocity. The woman who gives first wins every single time. And the reason this works has nothing to do with being nice. There's something hardwired in every human's brain that creates a felt obligation the second somebody gives them something with no strings attached. It's one of the most studied principles in all of psychology, and it shows up in every culture on earth. And this is honestly the move that made me rich faster than anything else. The reason is because when I stopped walking into every conversation thinking about what I could get from this or what I could use a specific person for, and started walking in thinking about what I could give, the opportunities started coming to me instead of me having to chase them. The people I wanted in my corner started showing up without me ever having to ask, and the money started landing in pieces I didn't even know to look for. The best example I can leave you guys with this is my networking story, because I used to think that networking was gonna get me everywhere. Okay, I would buy events, I would go to places, I would go everywhere I can meet people, which is really important. But when I was walking into those rooms, I was like, I just want to talk to everyone, see what I can get, see the value they can give me. But the second I flipped that, I built a name for myself. I actually had a valuable skill set. I started walking into rooms giving value. And now the networking wasn't about taking, it was actually about exchanging value. And people were naturally wanting to talk to me. I didn't have to go up to anyone. And this is where networking will actually take you somewhere. This is when opportunities literally arrive at your door. And the same exact thing is true in every other part of your life. Because the woman everyone wants to be around is not necessarily the prettiest or the one with the most money. She's the one who shows up with something the room didn't even know it needed. The one who makes the introduction nobody asked for. The one who says the thing nobody else was willing to say. And she's not nicer than all the other women in the room. She's just figured out that the woman who gives first ends up being the woman the entire room owes a favor to. So you give first and you let the rest of it do the work for you. And this right here is why persuasion is the single most valuable skill you can ever build if you actually want to get rich on your own terms. Because every dollar you have ever wanted is on the other side of somebody saying yes to you. The job, the raise, the offer, the opportunity, the partnership, all of it comes down to whether or not you can move another human being. And the women who figure this out are the ones who stop struggling for money because they have built the one skill that turns every conversation into income. Now, if you want to learn more about sales so you can actually start producing money in sales, I have a full free training right here on this channel where I walk you through front to back how I went from knocking doors to closing remotely, the exact psychology I use to close today, the exact frameworks, discovery objections, everything that you need in order to actually start making 20K plus months in commissions in sales. I'll leave the link in the description below and the video will be somewhere in this corner, and I'll see you there.